Welcome to the Unit 8 quiz number 3 review video, where we go over what we have done this week and let you know what's going to be on the quiz that is for week 3. Here we go. The first warning is, again, like on the other quiz, problems number 1 and 2 are going to be review. Problem 1 is find the greatest common factor of two different monomials, and problem 2 is going to be factor by grouping. So make sure you still have those worksheets near you, or notes, or those skills available. Then when you go on, the first group, or the next part of the problems, are going to be factor the expression. So you're not going to have equal sign, you're not going to have to solve for it, you just have to find what the factors are of the trinomial. Let's take a look at one example. So we've got x squared minus 9x minus 36. And again, there's no equal sign because it's an expression. So it's kind of like half a problem. You don't have to do as much as you do with the equations. What we need to do is we need to go back to the skill we had where we were finding two terms that when we multiply them together, that's kind of hard to read. When you multiply them together, you're getting a negative 36. But when you add them together, you get this negative 9. I chose this example just because those negatives sometimes throw us a little bit, and I wanted to do those. So I've got to find two factors when I add them together, getting negative 9. Two factors when I multiply, I'm getting negative 36. So a lot of times we look at those factors of negative 36. Now, since it's negative, when I multiply two different numbers together, I'm getting a negative number. So I know at least one of my numbers here has to be negative. When I add these two numbers together, I'm getting a negative 9. So I know my larger number is going to be negative. So I'm just going to list the factors of 36, just making sure that my bigger term is going to be negative. So I've got 1 times negative 36, or 2 times negative 18. 3 times negative 12, 4 times negative 9, 6 times negative 6. That's all I can think of. So those are my factors, numbers that when I multiply them together, I get negative 36. Now I need to see which one is going to make it so when I add them together, I'm getting negative 9. So which pair of factors, when I add them together, I get a negative 9. That's not it. Oh, okay, it looks like if I add these two together, it gives me a negative 9. So when I multiply them, I get negative 36. When I add them together, I get that negative 9. So those numbers are going to work. So I've got a 3 and a negative 12. And those definitely work. So that means when we factor this trinomial that we started out with, I've got an x plus 3 and an x minus 12. All right. So if you get that answer and then you go look to find which answer you want on the quiz, it might also say the answer in the multiple choice might be x minus 12 times x plus 3. Remember, these two binomials can be in a different order, so that's okay. So either one of those answers would be correct. All right, let's do another problem. In the next set, the directions are to solve. All right, solve means we're going to have equal sign, and we're going to get to do a little more work here. Let's take the problem x squared minus x minus 72 equals 0. All right, we're going to do this equation. It starts out the same way that expressions did. Okay, so the equation's going to start out the same way. We need to find our numbers. So when I multiply our two numbers, we get negative 72. When I add them together, I get this number that's in front of just our x to the 1. And since I don't see a number there, that lets me know that's a negative 1. So it needs to multiply to get negative 72. When I add the two terms, I get negative 1. You might know what that is already, but I'm going to go ahead and list our terms in case you don't. Let's see. Again, if I multiply, it's negative. Then I look down here, and this tells me the sign for my larger number. Right, so I've got 1 times negative 72, 2 times negative 36, 3 times negative 24, 4 times negative 18, 5 doesn't work, 6 times negative 12, 7 doesn't work, 8 times negative 9. So those are all of our factors, all of our number pairs. So when we multiply them together, we get negative 72. So now that I've listed those, I need to look to see which ones, when I add the two numbers together, it gives me this negative 1. So like 1 plus negative 72 is going to give me a negative 71. So we know that doesn't work. We know that 2 times negative 36, that's not going to work because that gives us a negative 34. So you keep adding together until you get, when you combine it, it's going to give you a negative 1. So you can see that those numbers are going to work. So I've got an 8 here and a negative 9 there, just like when we're doing expressions. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got x plus 8 times the other binomial is going to be x minus 9. But we're not done because we have that equals 0. So we have to keep that there. Then we use our zero product property, because I know if I have this times this equals 0, then either this has to equal 0 or this has to equal 0. So I set them x plus 8 equal to 0 and x minus 9 equal to 0. Just take each binomial, set it equal to 0, and then solve. So let's see. And solve one at a time. So this is x plus 8. I subtract 8 from both sides. So I get x equals negative 8. All right, the other thing, I've got to do this other one. So I add 9 to both sides. So I get x equals 9. All right, so your answers might look like x equals negative 8, x equals 9, or they could be listed in sets. Remember, like this. Got a negative 8 and a 9. It could be listed like that also. All right, so that is how you do those. So be careful with your negative signs. Make sure you remember that for expressions, you just find the factors and you get to stop. When it's an equation, you find your factors, but they're equal to 0, so you use your zero product property to find out what each of those variables could actually equal. All right, that is our review for our quiz. Good luck and have a great day.